material. So parent material is one of the main components is where you get your minerals from, your sandstone and clay, right? So we got a lot of this is sandstone here that we found. This is mapped as a cookport soil, and it has a sandstone.
Did you look at the recent remapping?
There's some. I've got some questions. Yeah.
Alex Dado come out and remapped.
Okay.
These soils.
What did he call this when he remapped it?
It was Armagh, Kavod, and
Kavod up in the forested area, right?
No.
Oh, It was
Kavod. It was Armagh up against the woods, and then it come to Kavod. And then was it that this here was Wharton?
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't think this would be. Kavod had more of the shales in it, but yeah, maybe with the water level and the fragipan.
Yeah, because he redid everything. None of the soils was right here.
Yeah, and there's still, as I was looking too on the map, when you go, the county switches over, right? Just right down here, the county line.
Yeah,
it's mapped something different on the other side of they line up, but they're not matched. So
yeah,
that's something we can work on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so for your soils here though, the parent material, we have a sandstone. Where did our sandstone get to? There's our sandstone. Let's can pass that around. So feel that grit on that when you pass that around, right? The sand. That's the parent material that we've got here.
Can we taste it too?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. There you go.
So parent material. Next is the climate. Here you get what do you get? 38 inches of rain a year, roughly.
Average is 42.
42. All right, so we get 42 inches of rain a year here. The climate, and you're a temperate climate for the most part.
41 degrees average temperature.
Yep. So think about if we were in the Southwest, New Mexico, Arizona, right? Things would probably slow down. You wouldn't have 40 inches of rain a year. You wouldn't have the freeze-thaw cycles that you would have here. So this is a highly weathered. This is an old soil. It's been here for a long time, and it is impacted by that 40 inches of rain a year, and also the climate, the time that it goes through that freeze-thaw cycle. But think about our soils up in maybe to contrast, the Southwest would be up in the boreal forest of Canada, right? We'd have a lot greater organic matter accumulations up there because the growing season might only be 3 or 4 months, or like Potter County we were talking about, just the organic matter. It doesn't have a chance to mineralize and break down as quick as the opposite of that even would be the tropics, right? Where everything's just in flux, just breaking down so quickly, being decomposed and returned back into the system. Where up north it's cold. We're below biological zero, 40 degrees through a good portion of the year, and organic matter just builds up. It doesn't have a chance to break down. But here in Forest County, or somewhere in between that, where we're building up organic matter, but it's also breaking down, being mineralized, being used by the plants to grow the plants, and then the cattle are moving across and consuming it and redepositing on the surface. So climate is one of the soil forming factors. Next is time. Think about these soils have been in place for a long time, but think about young soils, maybe on the coastal plains or the Outer Banks is a place you might find really young soils, right? Those soils wouldn't have developed. They wouldn't have a lot of soil structure. When you pick those soils up, you can see it's like subangular, blocky. The clay has moved down through. The colors have changed, moved. The colors, the soil colors can tell us about the time of it and the structure. Those soils don't have a lot of organic matter. They're not very dark, and they're massive, right? They're just kind of one big blob of soil. They don't have a lot of development in them. Another place you'd have young soils in Pennsylvania would be the glaciated areas of the Northwest. They had glaciers there 10,000 years ago, bulldozing back and forth, mixing them all up. So they're pretty young soils compared to, as we get into North Central and the Ridge and Valley, down through, we have, older soils. The irons move through them, and the colors come out of them and change them some compared to different younger soils. So we got parent material, climate, time, Aspect and landscape position are the other, or one of the other soil forming factors. Depending on the aspect that you're facing, south would have better, longer. South facing would have more sunlight, more growing degrees, have a little bit better growing conditions. And then along with that landscape position, these soils are, we would call these residual or residuum soils. They formed in place right here at this place. From the ground up as the parent material weathered, and organic matter, roots, trees were growing, dropping organic matter back on the surface, forming these soils where soils that are maybe some of your farms are along a river valley. Those would be called alluvial soils that are formed by deposition when you have floods depositing new sediment or scours pulling the soil away. Up in the glaciated areas, you'd have big glaciers bulldozing across the land, pushing everything in front of them, down those valleys, and then retreating, pulling back, and changing the landscape that way. Another one would be if anyone has farms along maybe a ridge, we call it colluvium, but soils that are formed or influenced by gravity. So those soils have moved down the slope as gravity influences them, either with erosion, but also just down the slope movement on them. And then the last soil forming factor is we can call it biology, soil microorganisms, but I saved it for last because it's the only one that I think that you can actually influence and change is the soil, fauna, flora. What you're growing here is one of the only soil forming factors that you can have an impact on. Russ can't change his parent material unless he puts a for sale sign up and moves to Lancaster County.
That's not happening.
But he can build up organic matter and change the soil microbes, the microorganisms, building organic matter. He can't change the parent material, the climate. He can't change his climate very easily, very quick. He could maybe irrigate, but soil microorganisms are one of the only ways, or soil biology, microbes is one of the only ways that you can, one of the soil forming factors that you can influence and really change, make a difference through management, that you can do that. And we talked, think about in our country, some of the best soils we have, the mollisols in the Great Plains, these deep soils out there. And they were just permanent grasslands and would have had bison roaming across them, and it would have been very similar to what Russ is doing here with, think of thousands and thousands of bison roaming across, this diverse grassland, and they would, trample everything down, eat it, leave a lot of manure and urine behind, probably like what you walk through to get here, and then they wouldn't come back I'm sure they didn't come back to there for a year, right? And they probably didn't have a lot of worms in the bison herds, and they didn't have mineral stations they stopped in for or anything like that. They were getting it by the different plants that were growing, deep-rooted plants, shallow-rooted plants, pulling up different amounts of micronutrients in the plants that are accessible for the grazing animals, and then they're excreting them back on the surface, and as you go through. So
yeah. So you talked about the biology. There's usually, when we think about soil quality, NRCS has 4 principles. You might have to help me on this one, but it's limit the disturbance, increase diversity, keep a living root, and keep the soil covered. And there's one more, and I think I saw a bison the other day here, but is adding animals back into that mix is what a lot of people, especially we heard that coming from the Dakotas when we were in North and South Dakota. That was one of the things that Jay Fuhrer out there really emphasized, was bringing animals back into cropping systems or
cover crop
necessary, cover crop. So those are the things that Russ has been doing, those principles, limiting disturbance, that diversity that he talked about, that living root. When we went to school agronomy, Ray Weil wrote one of the textbooks. I heard him speak one time. He said the most important of those he thought was keeping that living root, and Russ has really been doing a good job of that. Doesn't that look a lot like that thing he held up with the binder twine there this morning? So
A lot of roots there.
Yeah, keeping the surface covered, which
Yeah.
is most of us are grazers here. I mean, hopefully we've got the surface covered, but yeah.
So one of the things to limit disturbance. Anybody remember what he said his harvest rate was? What he usually, over the course of the year across the farm, what's the average grazing percent that he takes off? Do you remember what he said?
52.
52. So he's only taken about half of the above ground growth. And so we saw study after study in the 50s that showed anytime you take more than 50% of the above ground growth, you're limiting, or you're causing disturbance to the root system. Those roots are starting to slough off and die. So they're not in the ground. They're not feeding the biology that's in the ground.
And so you correct us if we're wrong, Russ, but Russ told us a story here. This farm through the 1900s was a potato farm, and we've all grown potatoes, right? And know how intensive that is, the soil disturbance that potato farming does. And then after that, it was row cropped, and I doubt they were doing no tillage and high intensity cover cropping whenever they were farming it. And you even told us you found corn fodder, right, that was several years old when you
Whenever I bought the farm, this farm sat fallow for 6 years, and it had corn stalks on it, like as if the corn was harvested the year before.
So that speaks to
That's
the
how
lack of
dead. That's how dead the soil was.
Yeah, I'm sure you couldn't have. It would have been interesting. You could have did an earthworm count then, to see what kind of.
Good luck finding one.
Yeah, to have that much
Yeah.
fodder from 6 years prior still here, that could speak to the.
nightcrawler count over where we got the cover crops, we're scout at. His dad and I went back in there at 3 o'clock in the morning one morning, and all you could hear was.
Going
And
down.
his dad was trying to dig every one of them up, and there was literally hundreds per square meter of night crawlers.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's great. Yep. And so yeah, you can see that things are definitely changing here as we're going to see shortly. So yesterday we did we brought this infiltration ring out, and we mixed up our proprietary white dye with water yesterday, and we poured it into this ring, and they put a round. If the ring is 4 inches thick, and 2 inches are out of the surface right now, and they filled it up once with 2 inches, and then came back and put around another inch in. So say 3 inches of precipitation on this given area, and it all infiltrated within less than an hour, 50 minutes or something like that. We weren't doing it necessarily as an infiltration study, but more we just wanted to show you, how far down into the soil profile we can see this dye, and where we can see the dye also is important, that we wanted to point out. So that's something we wanted to share with you today. And so, but you can, I guess first we can point out also we can see the dark brown surface on the topsoil. Is very just crumbles in our hands, right? It looks like cottage cheese. That's what you want to see whenever we're looking for soil health, right? Healthy soils. From all those, there's an earthworm right there, but we can pass that around and see. There could be a measure of soil health if your soils feel like that, like cottage cheese, right? Just crumbly. It still has structure to it. Glomalin, the earthworms secrete it, and it's just the organic glues that hold it all together. So we can see that, and then we can see the subsoil below that. Here we go, and just look at the color of that, right? It doesn't have the organic matter into it, and we can see where there's a clear, abrupt boundary where we go from the topsoil, the A horizon, down to the B horizon, and that boundary would have been from the potato or crop farming that went on, where we would have had plows. We measured it in the last group. It's 9 inches thick for the topsoil. And how many here have done some plowing, right? Is that about how far down you go? 9 inches, probably?
I don't know that.
Yeah, but so 9 inches, that have been, average plow depth in Pennsylvania. And then think about, I've seen it lots of places where we, people haven't done this to help alleviate it. You have a compacted layer, we call it the plow pan, right where it transitions into that B horizon, because for lifting up that weight, just the physical plow, but then all that soil that it's lifting and inverting, flipping over, all that weight is pressing down onto your subsoil, and you get a plow pan there. It's just a compacted layer that the roots can't get through, or the earthworms, and then that's where just everyone traditionally focused on growing their crops in that top 9 inches, and whatever happened below it, forget it. So that's the topsoil, the A horizon, and that's just something we wanted to point out. But as we looked here, we were measuring. Where did we find the first ones we measured here? You can see if you're standing on this side back here, we can see in the A horizon where the dye went down through. It went down through several places. It went along the ped faces, and then also along the.
What's the ped face?
That would be like if we break this open, the ped face would be where it splits, right? Where there's between the structure of it. Yep. Good question. And and then we can also see where it's going on the macropores. Would be any macropores defined as like 2 millimeters and greater or something. But an earthworm channel, right? Or a root channel that has decayed. That'd be a macropore. So look at if we can see this one as it goes down through here, we can see the organic matter that's deposited. I think we measured that one was 17 inches down to this rock right here. Then we can see can you guys see that? The organic matter that's coming the whole way down through the profile. And then we were able to dig one out. Over here we found, right here they are, some roots. We have roots going down. They finally hit a rock at that one is 24 inches, and then they're going sideways, and they probably go around it, and they're still going. So that's the diversity of having those warm season grasses, and they're deep rooted, and that pore that has the organic matter, is likely an earthworm burrow at first, and then the roots followed that down through, filled it up, and then the roots are sloughing off also as they grow. They give off their dead cells. They're putting that organic matter back into the soil as well. So that's how we can build up the resiliency whenever we have intense rainstorms, or we got 100-degree days for 30 days in a row, that these plants can keep growing out here. They can tap into that, right? I think it's going to be exponential. You'll see, been doing this for 12 years, right? 12 or 13 years. So the longer you go doing this, you're going to keep building up resiliency in the system as you build organic matter, and keep going. It'll be to be able to withstand heavy, quick rain events, or to you guys talked about, right? You measured the soil temperature. You came out and measured that.
Yeah, we've done that on a hot day. We've done it on bare soil and also where we had good cover, Russ. And we looked and saw differences from the 60s and 70s to the 90s. Where we had good cover to where we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. And so that would be one, killing soil microbes, when you're getting above 100 degrees, and then also the evapotranspiration. Those plants are hot, so they're going to be burning water out of their, any water that's left in there. They're going to be using it up just to, keep their cell walls, wet and open. So they're, burning up using extra water and energy to just stay alive, where you don't have that residue cover and the diversity. So I'm trying to think what else we were looking at in here. We talked a little bit about in the other groups that we could see the iron moving in here. It means the the iron, the red colors we can see would be the iron as it's going from ferrous to ferric iron, Fe3 plus to Fe2 plus. So it's precipitating out as the groundwater table is at some point during the year. The groundwater table is up into here, and there's water up in there, and the iron is in solution and is moving around. But then as oxygen gets back into the system, it's precipitating out on these head faces or along the root pores. We'll see it also as you can see. Probably that's maybe a root. See where the orange is coming out in different places. Also, there's some other ones, and we can see that weathered bedrock as well. You can snap at the sandstones, right? Or being influenced for that freeze thaw, the water's getting down there.
So that's considered sandstone there.
Yep.
That's soft stuff.
Yeah, it's what do some people call it? Like weathered sandstone or
Because
weathered
a
rock.
lot of the farm you get down 36 inches and you get that stuff.
Okay, yeah, we're at somewhere. I mean, that's probably 30 inches or so, or a little over 2 feet. But yeah, it's just weathered and pretty sandy. Yep. And and I was looking at your soil test, the CECs, the cation exchange capacity, and it's what, 7 or something like that, and that's not really that high. If we had someone here from Lancaster County, or think about like good like Hagerstown silt loams or clay soils, we'd have CECs up in like 12 is good, and I like to look at that number because that's the ability of the cation exchange capacity would be the sites of the negative electrons that can store nutrients. Most of the nutrients, the macronutrients, phosphorus and potassium, are positively charged, and you can't change your parent material like we talked about, but you can add organic matter, and organic matter is negatively charged and can hold nutrients. So that's what I think part of what you're doing here is you're able to you're building the organic matter with the diverse grasses and crops that you're growing, and the way the cattle are managed across the landscape. So you're adding to the ability to hold nutrients in there, whether they're showing up on the soil test or not. They're obviously here if you can grow this type of grass.
So the biology needs a certain amount of energy to keep active, needs certain conditions, but one of those is energy. I remember how many pounds of beef Russ said he was typically growing on here, what his stocking rate was. Do you remember what that was? It was about 1 animal unit per 2 acres. It's about 500 pounds of beef. But does anybody know what the biology, that same acre, is supporting as far as the soil biology?
In weight?
Pardon?
In pounds you're talking about?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Ed Ballard did a study. Does anybody know that offhand? I can't. Was it between 8 and 10 tons?
Oh, wow.
Below
Around
ground
20,000
biology
pounds,
that he
yeah.
Estimated.
Around 20,000 pounds of living.
Varies by soil type, but way more activity below ground than what we think of as we're trying to raise as far as a crop or a product. We have to try and remember to feed that too, to keep all these synergies happening under the soil surface. The things that he's changing is the biology, like Tyson was saying there, in the soil. So that takes a bit of energy to keep that going. So again, leaving that soil covered has a lot of different advantages.
There's roots, and also the dye that we put in down to about 28, 29 inches, and they're kind of maxing out because they're hitting bedrock, down.
Yeah, but if you look at the size of that root, it probably goes a lot further, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, this one. I was looking at I found root hairs down, hitting the bedrock right there. But yeah, I'm sure they're going. They're and maybe part of the year they're it's water. They're not. That's kind of limiting where they can go also. But yeah, they're definitely getting down there. But they're able to access that though, when it's dry out, and like we talked about, hot in the summertime, helps them keep growing.
Yeah, we don't suffer the summertime droughts like a lot of folks do.
So maybe I missed this at the beginning because I was a little late too. But what's your theory on what the soil looked like 10 or 13 years ago? Was it at that? Because that carbon obviously would have been all burned out from the row cropping. So how has it changed? You think?
What I don't remember is that streakedness. Do you, Russ, going into the subsoil from
No.
pits we dug early on?
We dug pits early on, like in 2011-ish, and we didn't find that modeling or that streaking that he's showing us here.
But you had the carbon. The topsoil looked similar.
The topsoil was not nearly as dark.
I bet, yeah, the darkness.
It was pretty light brown. Because we were back early on, you were looking at a 2.5 organic material.
Oh, what are they?
My last one was in 2017, so it wouldn't be accurate. But I have samples up to in the 4s.
Yeah, there's a good example where you can just see the, that organic matter going down through. And, if this management is kept up think about it, it took a long time to, 100 years, 150 years to mess this up. So it's, if it were managed like this for 150 years, we'd probably see it down 2 feet, over time. Just
It'd
keep
be pretty sweet, yeah.
Yeah, building it up. But
You can see it's building it.
Yeah.
It's kids.
Yeah.
Kids. No pressure.
Yeah. Emmy's giving Rob quite the work over.
Good. That's good.
She is. She's keeping him on his toes.
do you guys have any questions on the soils here or soils at your farms?
It's kind of semi-related. As a kid, have to go out with a team, to plow the field. So you got to know the field pretty well, okay? And you're plowing down, 6, 9, whatever you think. It's going to be about the same every year. And you'll be fine. All of a sudden, one year you'll go out, boom, hit a rock, flip it up. You're plowing at the same thing. Where did that rock come from? Where do they come from? Down underneath? Somebody dropped them out of an airplane? I don't know.
You don't think that your soil kept washing away and you were going a little bit further?
Really don't.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
Hey, Russ, tell them about the wood soil.
If you guys have a chance, maybe we can do a zigzag as we go over to Austin next. But if you go to the woods over here, the woods is 8 to 12 inches. The soil line's 8 to 12 inches higher than what these fields are.
And that would have been eroded away.
These fields were eroded away over the time that it was farmed or agriculture.
I don't understand it.
You're going to lose year after year.
And sheet erosion too. If you were to go look at a crop field, you wouldn't need much slope to see the sheet erosion.
Out here, it's I don't know if you come in. Did you come in this way? It's out there at the end. The fields are flat. There is a tunnel underneath the road, a culvert pipe. That culvert pipe and that field, we get an inch rain, that field turns brown or muddy looking, and it plugs that culvert pipe up. At least 3 times a year they have to come and clean that culvert pipe up, and that's flat soil.
Much sediment coming off of flat ground.
That's a lot of sediment, yes.
And it's maybe because the water's not infiltrating and it's got to go somewhere, right?
Yeah, but by the same token, you have something growing, right? I mean, it's not like there's going to be nothing on the field. There'll be something growing there. Won't that be adding to it at the same time?
Depends. I guess it depends what you're growing. And if you're growing corn grain and baling up the fodder and taking it back, or growing soybeans year after year, not a lot of organic matter or diverse things. But yeah, you can build organic matter just crop farming. Guys that are doing lots of multi-species cover crops and have diverse rotations. They can build organic matter, but like you said, you're out there, plowing every year with the.
It's something that never made any sense to me. I mean, you could plow that field 20 times, and you go out the next time and you hit this rock.
Where'd it come from? Yeah.
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 Well, and you do like the NRCS does those Russell 2 calculators. Like what's in a tilled crop field, depending on the slope and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you're still talking tons an acre of soil loss every year.
Yeah.
You never see it. You never saw like 3 truckloads of soil jump off, but it's just.
Yep. I think
That's conservative though, like 4 tons to the acre on some of these.
When I moved here, I think the NRCS did one of those calculations, and they told me, or at least in my paperwork that I have from them, I was losing 4 tons a year of topsoil.
I think a ton a year is, or maybe it's a ton and a half, is pretty close to a dime thickness. Is that, do you remember that, Tim? We tried to do that before, the math on it. It's pretty close to a ton or a ton and a half is the thickness of a dime over the surface. But an acre is 43,500. 208 by 208 is an acre. The thickness of a dime.
So do you ever see T at 0?
No, but the closest you see it is whenever you have perennial grasses. When you put it in the
But
soil.
still, what's T for perennial grasses on most? 1 or?
Yeah, half a ton or something.
So
Is the lowest.
They're always predicting some loss. I
Yeah.
think.
Yep.
Some loss, but you're going to have some gain too, correct?
Yeah, the trick is to gain more than you lose.
Yeah.
If you're just growing corn and soybeans and you're just putting fertilizer on them to meet the needs, you're probably taking.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep. It depends if you're moldboard plowing and disking, chiseling,
Your
or
bulk
if you're
density is
making.
going to affect that too.
Yeah,
How
but
much, if you have real fluffy soil versus something that's really compacted and dense, you're losing depth.
Yeah, if you have a good, if you're working with a Gilpin soil or a Hagerstown silt loam too, the type of soil that you've got, its capacity to, weather and reproduce.
If you got, I don't know if you ever heard Ian Mitchell talk, he talks about every time you plow and you work to grab the soil, there's a certain amount of carbon going off.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much carbon equates to soil loss. I'm sure it's probably a little bit, that just goes into the air.
Yeah, it's like burning up the carbon when you add oxygen by plowing or any kind of disturbance like that.
That's good. Any other final questions, or I guess I forgot one more plug. The USDA has a website. It's called Web Soil Survey. You can navigate, find your farm on there. You can look up your soil type, and then it has lots of different information about those different soil series, percent sand, silt, and clay, soil properties, limiting factors, depth to water table, and it's a tool. You can use it as a tool. Not all of them are perfectly right, but you can kind of get it pinpointed in, or maybe where the boundaries are better than the map does. But you'll know there's hydric soils here, shallow rocks, layers, depth of bedrock, different things, and then you can also get it's an app. It's called Soil Web, and it just looks like the Soil Horizons Soil Web. It's through UC Davis. It's an app, and then you can just touch it, and it'll bring up the soil map here, and you can see what kind of soils you're on, and give you some ideas about it. Yeah. It's a free app.
What was the name of that website?
If you just type in Google Web Soil Survey, you can just type in Web Soil.